Can everybody see the slides?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So thanks, Joe, for that opening. You mentioned a couple things I was going to mention, so I can skip that. But one of the things I'll say is that I think most of the people that are at the Palm Court today and most of the people that are on Zoom actually completed the survey. So you know that there were a lot of questions on it. In the interest of time and to keep people from glazing over from seeing endless charts, I haven't summarized everything today. I've tried to summarize the high points. It is not with any intent to exclude anything. So that if there's something that you saw, I know I have the membership committee here too and the board that I haven't mentioned, feel free to bring that up, or if you have questions, ask me either after the meeting or if we have time today. But as Joe said, we had really good response to this. So one of the questions that came up when we were talking about this at the board was, why should we do a membership survey right now? We're almost 7 months into a pandemic that has, by all accounts, really significantly impacted our club, just as it has lots of aspects of everyday life. But the reason that we thought that this was important to do is really, I think, best illustrated by the graph on the side here. The red area there represents our membership over the course of the last 4 years, 5 years, since Rotary year 2016-17. And you can see that we were right about 79 members there. We went up to 83 members in the year 18-19. And by the beginning of 2021, we dropped down below 70. The black bars represent people who had terminated from the club. And you see 6 back in 16-17, 3 in 17-18. It's about typical as you look. But 18-19, 19-20, we saw a pretty significant spike with 12 in 18-19 and 13 in 19-20. And in 2021, and we're just barely a quarter into 2021, we have 5 already so far this year. So we thought on the membership committee, and I think on the board, that this was a really important time to weigh in and see how people were doing, because this was happening independent of the pandemic. And we know that the pandemic has impacted people. So here's some background information about who completed the survey. And Joe, you mentioned the fact that we had 49 people complete it, which I think was amazing. Not surprisingly, the majority of those who completed the survey were actually some of our more engaged members. 87% had participated in a meeting or service project within the last 3 months, and 79% within the last month. So we asked another question and we said, if you've attended a meeting in the last 2 months, how have you attended? And we did this because we did the survey in September. And at that point, we had been doing hybrid meetings for about 2 months. And I don't know if the answers will be surprising to people or not. 23% have only been to in-person meetings. 47% have only been to virtual meetings. So almost half of the people that have attended have been virtual only. And then the remainder, 30%, have done a combination of the two. All right. So we asked questions about meetings, culture, value, engagement, communication, service project, and some other things. The next 2 slides are going to summarize the results of the questions about meetings. This first slide is what I will call the content aspects. And let me explain the slide because you might not be able to read the writing on it too well. The green bar at the bottom, which is the small bar, represents people who responded that the question was not applicable. The red bar are those who were very satisfied. The gray is somewhat satisfied. And up at the top, you see black, which is not satisfied. And going from left to right across the top of the screen, or the bottom if you can read the writing, these are questions that asked about speakers. The flying dollar is our fun and frolic. The Rotary symbol is our Rotary International updates. The next area we asked about was the opportunity to socialize. And the final was the opportunity for networking and making professional connections. And I think the good news here is that there's a lot more red than there is black or gray. The highest ranking area here was speakers and programs, and over 80% of the respondents were satisfied or very satisfied with those. Then you'll see that the numbers drop off a little bit. Lowest in terms of satisfaction was fun and frolic, but it was followed very closely by RI updates and the opportunities for socializing and networking. So the next slide represents what I would call the meeting logistics, so to speak. And again, going from left to right, we asked about satisfaction with the day and time, the location, the length of the meeting, the meals at the meeting, the audio, visual, and Zoom logistics. And you can see on this slide that for the most part, there's a lot of red, and this seems to be an area that most people are very satisfied with. You'll see that there's a pretty big green bar there under meals, which is the not applicable. And I assume that those are primarily the people who have been attending meetings virtually, where that doesn't really matter too much to them at this point. So then we asked some questions about culture. And I've got a couple of slides about this. One was we asked people to agree or somewhat agree or disagree with several statements. One was we do a good job of involving new members. Another one was we do a good job of involving families. And I think that when you look at this, you'll see that the red bars are a little bit smaller. And the red bars represent the people that agree. The pink are people who somewhat agree. The gray and the black are people who somewhat disagree or disagree completely. And I think that this potentially represents an opportunity for some improvement. And I will just say right now that the membership committee has looked at these slides and took this result for involving new members to heart. And that's one of the things that we're working on, looking at ways that we can address that. And we'll talk about more about that in the future coming up. Another question was, we seek to involve all members according to their interests. And you see this on the top, and you can see that generally people agree or somewhat agree with this. However, there's more people who only somewhat agree than people who do agree. And the bottom slide, which I think should make us all feel pretty good, is that we're a caring club. 66% agree that we care about each other. When you add in the somewhat that agree with that, there's only 6% who would somewhat disagree, and no one who said that they disagreed with that statement. The next question that we asked there, and this was to me an interesting one, we reflect the demographic profile of our community's businesses, professional and community leaders. And you can see as you look at the results here that we're about equally split between agreeing and somewhat agreeing, but with 22% who somewhat agree or disagree. I have to tell you that, in doing slides like this, you're typically trying to compress things so that there's less to read. And the first time I did this, I said, I labeled the box on the left, we reflect the demographic profile of our community. And then when I was putting together my notes for what I was going to say today, I looked at that and I said, well, this can't be true because I don't know things off the top of my head about the age profile or the ethnic racial profile of our community. But I know that we have more than 19% of our community that are women, which is what we currently have here. And so that actually made me come back to take a look at this. I don't know what the actual demographics of the leaders are in our community, but this is what we said about the results. So Zoom, with a large number of people attending meetings by Zoom, we thought that it would be a good idea to put some questions on here about Zoom. And 82% actually agreed or somewhat agreed that Zoom has provided opportunities for member engagement. In fact, one person said, the Zoom option is terrific. It will likely be my way to attend and re-engage. But only 46% agree or somewhat agree that it's actually strengthened our club, which I think is interesting and perhaps merits some further thinking. We had a bunch of questions on the survey about service projects, and I only have one slide for service projects. I will tell you that there were questions about how well are they organized, things of that nature. Those scored extremely high. This was a question on how people felt about the number of service projects that we do. If you look at the bottom, you see the overall score. About 80% thought it was just right. We've got probably about 10, 15% that think there's too few, and then a number in the middle who think that there's too many. Then it was further broken down into how people felt about local service projects versus international service projects. And I think it's kind of interesting to see we've got over 80% of the respondents who felt that the number of local service projects were just right, although there were some people who thought that there were too few. Bigger category who thought that there were too few was in the international arena, where over 80% felt that we had too few. Although, again, interestingly, that was where we also had the largest percentage that thought that we had too many. Okay, so turning to communication, 75% agreed that the club did a good job communicating, and there were many comments about how much people liked the big wheels. So kudos to Betsy and the great job she's doing with that. The numbers drop off, though, a little bit when you look at the other aspects of communication, with 50% only agreeing that the club seeks input from members, 48% saying that we do a good job listening, and 50% agreeing that we regularly act on member input. So I think that this represents good feedback to the board, and certainly something that I'm sure Joe is going to have us work on. One of the things I didn't display here, but I'll tell you about, is that we had a question about change. And the question essentially was, I'm agreeable with the pace of change. 50% agreed with that statement. If we were going to do this survey again, I think we would change the nature of that question, because I can tell you that anecdotally, talking with people, I talked to people who disagreed, some because they felt that we were changing too much, and some because we felt that we weren't changing enough. So that represents the results there. Okay, moving on to value. We have the highest ranking score in all is that 90% of the people who responded feel welcome at the club. And I think that that is something that we can feel really good about. 73% feel that we make valuable connections through Rotary. 70% feel that Rotary is financially worth the cost that people put into it. 79% feel that we make a difference in the community. Now, there are some other questions that we asked here that ranked a little lower. I didn't put them up there, but I think that they merit consideration as we go forward. 62% feel that the club provides opportunities to use their skills and talents. 57% agree that their family sees value in their Rotary membership. And only 44% agree that their friends see value in that. So, dues. Interesting question. Came from our membership committee, and there were two statements. If we did this again, we'd probably word it in a slightly different fashion. But one statement was, I would like to revert to the former all-in dues structure. And the other statement was, I would like to see pay-as-you-go retained. And we asked people to agree or disagree with these. And because they were two separate questions, you see the results in front of you. 55% would like to revert to the former dues structure. 56% would like to see pay-as-you-go retained. And you may be sitting there saying, well, gee, that is more than 100%. How does that work? And I think some of the insight to that would come from the fact that there were, in the comments section, there were several comments from people who said that they were okay with the all-in dues structure, but not in the current pandemic environment where they weren't attending meetings. Okay, so finally, the last area that we asked about, although this doesn't necessarily follow the order of the survey, was engagement. And you can see the responses here. Only 46% agree that they frequently participate in projects. There's another 35% who say that they somewhat agree. But I think we'd all probably like to see that number get a little bit higher. 56% are comfortable inviting friends and family to attend events. 46%, a little bit lower, are comfortable inviting friends and family to attend meetings. And only 24% agree that they regularly invite prospective members to join our club. And then finally, rounding out in this value section, 77% plus an additional 21% who somewhat agree are proud of their Rotary Club. Which brings us to the last question, which was actually the first question on the survey. And it asked, how satisfied are you with your Rotary membership? And each one of these people here, and sorry that they're all generically men, but each one of these people here represents one member in our Rotary Club. The members who are in the red people are the people who said that they were satisfied. The pink people are people who said that they were somewhat satisfied. And the gray people, the dark gray people, are people who weren't sure. They were neither satisfied nor dissatisfied. And if you look at that and just stop right there, forget the rest of them right now, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job. I think we'd all agree that our goal would be to take those pink people and make them red, and take the gray people and make them red or pink. But before we turn away from that, I would like to draw your attention to the white people here, or the light gray people, because these are the people who have ghosted us, so to speak. These are the members of our club that didn't return the survey. And so we don't know how they feel about Rotary in general. And we don't really know anything about the specific questions that we asked about on the survey. So for this reason, I'm not sure that we should really pat ourselves on the back right now for what a great club we have. I think that we really need to work to change some of the pink to red. And Joe mentioned earlier that he's asked the board for recommendations. And I would say to the club as a whole, if you have ideas about things that you can do, you can share them. And in closing, I would say, I think that one of the comments that came in on the survey sums it up perfectly, as if I were going to give a high level summary, which is, I think we have a good Rotary Club, but I wish we had a great one. So that's a little bit of bias on my part, but with that, I will open it up for questions or comments.
All right, we got two in the room.
Linda, why don't you, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I think the first hand I saw was Millie's.
Well, it's not so much a question, it's just a comment. I really appreciate what went into creating the survey, what goes into coming up with calibrating the responses, putting it together. I found it very interesting, and I feel that it really shows the dedication of the club to be the best club it can be. So even if I think I was a red person in your last slide, but if I were a pink person, based on the fact that we did this survey, I'd be red by now. So I just want to let you know, Linda, I think it's important and really good, and I appreciate you doing it.
Thank you.
I agree, Linda. Thank you for all the effort you put into making this successful.
Does anyone on Zoom have a question? We had one more in the room. Okay, no, then.
Oh,
Dave.
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 And Neil?
Dave, you're muted. Dave, you're muted.
Yep. Okay. Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe not a question, but a comment, a thought about the, I think you said it was 18 unreturned surveys. I think it would be worthwhile for membership committee or anybody else who's interested, willing to do it, to take a name and reach out directly to one of the 18 people and try to connect with them and find out how they're doing and find out what their thoughts are.
We don't know who they all are. We have a good idea. So I would tell you that I don't remember the exact number. I think there were about 37 who completed that secondary part of the survey to put their name in the raffle. And the reason we did it was purely for that reason, Dave. But there's another 10 that didn't do that.
I didn't, okay, yeah. So it
I mean,
makes it
I think we
difficult.
could guess about who some of the people were, but I don't know that we definitively know that.
Okay.
I was staying on the Zoom side. Did I hear there was another question? Was it
Neil,
Neil, I thought? Yeah. Neil, you have a question?
I actually have a couple. Linda, that last statement that person asked, taking us from good to great, did they give any suggestions on what would get us there from that? And then the kind of associated question, I think the number was 77% said they were proud of our club. Were there any comments from those that were not proud as to why? Just think how we can make things better and how we can move the needle on both of those.
That's a good question, Neil. We'd have to go back and take a look at it. We have the ability to do two things. We can filter by answers to questions, and we actually can look at individual survey responses to see how that is. I don't have that information at my fingertips.
Okay.
I think that
Okay.
is.
Well done, though. Nicely done.
All right, Bill, you still remember your question?
Yeah, so, a lot of times when people do surveys, they give out the results, and then that's the end of the survey. So what's the next step? Where do you go from here? What are you gonna do with this information? I mean, are there going to be committees? Are you gonna ask for people in the club? We got 36 people that are very satisfied. We got 2 open board positions that nobody has stepped up to do yet out of the 36 people. So what do we do next? Where do we go from here?
As you say, you taking that, Linda?
Well, I don't actually think that that's a question for me as much as it's a question for the club, although I can tell you that as the membership committee looked at this, we saw a couple of immediately actionable, we saw a couple of actionable items that we thought that we would focus on, which included how can we do a better job of onboarding and bringing in new members, and how can we increase the diversity of the membership in the club. I think that there are other areas that, again, sort of we own as a club. And so I'm going to defer on that to Joe, although Joe has asked the board to submit their thoughts and ideas on where we should focus.
Yeah, so because even though this came under membership, it was not, like Linda just said, the results do not necessarily affect membership, just a small portion of it does. Personally, I think the one that has blown me away the most is the 46% that feel that our service projects are satisfied. And it shows in the fact that we have a hard time getting people to chip in and be involved in our service projects. So I'd personally like to see that one improve. And I think with COVID, we have an opportunity, as you see other clubs are doing it. But I have asked every board member, all of the 10 that are currently on the board with the 2 vacant seats, to identify their concerns for our next board meeting. And I want to dedicate a bulk of our board meeting to addressing coming up with an action plan. Because as Bill said, we've done surveys before. We never did one this extensive, but we've done surveys before. And I'm not sure how much we really followed through and rose up to the needs and the desires of the membership. So once again, personal feelings, I see us at a breaking point in the sense that I think that all clubs have challenges right now. And I talked about this in my installation speech, that we have to step up to the challenge. And at the board, I think this is an opportunity for the board to rise. If there's anything as the leaders of this club we can do is put together a action plan that is going to address as many of these concerns as we can. We can't get to all of them, of course. The good news is most of the things that the way we do things seem to be mostly satisfied by the membership, satisfactory. So really go after hard the ones that we need to work on. And we can use everyone's help, of course. So as Bill just said, we still have two board positions we've been trying to fill for 4 months for one and 6 months for the other, and even PI preceding my term. So yes, this is something that we will be addressing. And I mentioned last week the governor's challenge. I'd like to see some of these things that we need to address are things that we can strive to do to reach the governor's challenge. There's a number that are their objective data, the objective things that we can say, hey, we haven't done good with this. We need to hit this many. Here's the plan to make sure that we do that. And as we do, we should be able to check more and more boxes to get the governor's citation.
Joe, that's a good point. When Neil asked how do you go from good to great, there are a lot of ways that the district, a lot of avenues to go from good to great. There are certain goals that the district and Rotary International ask you to achieve, and they reward you with things like the governor's challenge and the president's challenge. And in the last few years, we haven't done that. We're a good club. That wasn't my comment, but it was a good comment. There are a lot of ways which we could go from being, the kind of club we are to being a great club.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions?
One comment, Bill.
Karen has a comment.
So from a community service perspective, since I'm chairing community services, one thing that I heard that came out of the survey, which I wasn't aware of, or that I just never thought of, is that we do have a lot of our service projects during the day or during, working hours. And I counted them up, and those far outweigh the ones that were on the evening and weekends. So once we get through the pandemic, because right now everybody clearly said they want to do most of their service projects on their own time, we will definitely make a genuine effort to try to do more things outside of work hours. So just one comment on that. Trying to immediately instill change.
And an easy one to instill, and one that's always been a problem for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for me to do pantry shopping Wednesdays at 2 o'clock.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions from the Zoom contingent? Okay, well, Linda, thank you, your committee. And what did you use to put that together? That was an interesting, like how you had the little deep symbols and stuff. I was trying to figure out what program, what software was that?
PowerPoint.
Well,